It's time once again for Uncle Matt's bedtime story. Hello everybody, it's Uncle Matt, and I'm here to read you another bedtime story. There is so much to celebrate today. Today is Pi Day. Yes, it's Pi Day, 3.14, that Pi Day. And I have pie to celebrate. So this is kind of a crumble. I'm gonna have a bite right now because I've been waiting till I get on camera to have some. But I do have some peach pie, and we had some pizza pie last week. Today being Pie Day, but also today is season 3 of Uncle Matt's bedtime story. That's right, 3 years of doing Uncle Matt's bedtime story. And we have over 700 episodes, so please, feel free. Maybe start tomorrow. Start binge watching all those Uncle Matt's bedtime story episodes. There are hours of stuff. Well, don't lose your job or school or anything like that. Got a great story today. It's based on a movie back when I was a kid, so you need to ask your grown-up in your family to maybe put it on your Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever you're binge watching, however you're streaming your service. It might even be on YouTube. You could maybe stream it. It's called Back to the Future. That's right. Back to the Future, and this is a really cool version of the story. Based on the movie written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, illustrated by Kim Smith. Back to the Future. Are you ready? I gotta have a little more pie first for Pie Day, and we'll get to the story. Excuse me, haven't brushed my teeth yet. Okay, so the year that we're taping this right now, 2022. But Marty McFly has time traveled. That's right, this story has to deal with time traveling back to 1955. Can he find his way back to the future? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. There's more I could read on there. There's a whole bunch of clocks. This story was copyrighted in 2018. Back to the Future. There's great illustrations here. All right. So the sign here says, "Welcome to the city of Hill Valley." Goldie Wilson is the mayor, it looks like. And the person on the skateboard with the headphones, that's Marty McFly. It is 1985, and Marty McFly lives in a town called Hill Valley. Hill Valley is a friendly town with a courthouse that's famous because of its broken clock. Oh, yikes. The clock stopped 30 years ago after it was struck by lightning. Today, the people of Hill Valley want to make sure the clock is preserved. The sign here says, "Save the clock tower, Hill Valley Telegraph. Clock tower struck by lightning on November 12th, 1955. Clock stopped at 10:04. A little more info there. So, very important to know that clock stopped then. Now, Marty has a best friend who's an adult. Marty's best friend is scientist named Dr. Emmett Brown. Marty calls him Doc. Doc is always making cool inventions like an automatic dog food feeder and a giant guitar amplifier. But Marty's life at home is not so cool. Marty's parents, George and Lorraine, don't seem to love each other. His brother Dave and his sister Linda are always arguing. Do you know of anybody like that? Always arguing, maybe not loving one another? Oh boy. And George has a mean boss named Biff Tannen. Biff. Biff is a bully. He always pushes George around and makes him do extra work. Marty wishes his father would stand up to Biff, but George doesn't have the courage. One night, Doc reveals his newest invention to Marty. He built a time machine in a car. The way I see it, Doc explains, if you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style? The time machine uses a special fuel called plutonium. Plutonium generates 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. Electricity powers the flux capacitor, and speed equals 88 miles per hour. Flux capacitor and speed equals time travel. Now you know. You can build one yourself. When Marty test drove the time machine, he accidentally time traveled to 1955. Whoa, 1955, 30 years earlier. It was long before the mall had been built and before the time machine had been invented. Marty knew he had to get home, so he hid the time machine and went to search for young Doc Brown. Hopefully the time machine's inventor could help him get back to the future. Marty discovered that Hill Valley looked very different in 1955. Here's a few things I noticed. They didn't mention the mayor's name on the sign, but on these election posters, someone named Red Thomas wants to be re-elected mayor. Well, the cars looked different, the clothes looked different, but the clock was working fine because it was still 1 week before the lightning bolt would strike it. Before Marty could find young Doc Brown, he found his parents at a soda shop. In 1955, George and Lorraine were teenagers, just like Marty. And that bully Biff was still pushing poor George around and making him do his homework. Marty defended George and accidentally interfered with his parents' romance. Now Lorraine liked Marty because he stood up to Biff. Awkward. That was a problem. If George and Lorraine didn't fall in love and marry, how could they ever have kids? Marty looked at a photo of himself with his brother and sister, Dave and Linda, and they were starting to disappear as if they'd never been born. Marty located the house of young Doc Brown and introduced himself. My name is Marty, and I'm from the future. I came here in a time machine that you invented, and now I need 1.21 gigawatts of electricity to get back to the year 1985. Doc didn't believe him. So Marty took Doc to the time machine, but Doc had bad news. There's no plutonium in 1955, and only a bolt of lightning can generate that kind of power. Unfortunately, we never know when or where lightning will strike. Marty told Doc the story of the clock tower. The lightning bolt would strike it in just a few days. Doc quickly put together a plan. If we can harness the energy from the lightning, we can send you back to the future. Here's the plan. A wire is stretched from the clock tower down the street. Lightning strikes clock tower at exactly 10:04 p.m. 1.21 gigawatts of electricity travel down the wire. Car travels at 88 miles per hour. Hook touches wire and sends electricity into flux capacitor. But Marty Doc says. Before you leave 1955, you have to make sure your parents fall in love. Otherwise, you and your brother and sister will never be born. Marty spent the next few days trying to make his parents fall in love. Marty begged George to invite Lorraine to the school dance. Though George liked Lorraine, he was too shy to ask her. Marty checked the photo again and saw that he was starting to fade away too. He had to do something. Marty remembered that his father liked science fiction, so that night Marty sneaked into George's bedroom dressed like an alien. "I am Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan," Marty said. "If you don't invite Lorraine to the school dance, I will melt your brain." The trick worked. George found the courage to speak to Lorraine. But Marty knew he'd also have to teach George to find courage to stand up for himself. Things worked out perfectly. George liked Lorraine so much that he stood up for her to protect her from Biff. And that night, be ready for this, that night George and Lorraine danced. And they kissed. And they fell in love. Marty's plan worked. And just in time, too, because that very night, lightning was going to strike the clock tower. Doc put his plan in motion. He attached a giant wire to the clock while Marty raced down the street, speeding up to 88 miles per hour. But a tree fell on the wire, snapping it, and Doc goes, "Great Scott!" Doc raced down to fix the cable before the clock struck 10:04 p.m., that is. Doc connected the cables just as Marty drove under them and lightning struck the clock tower. The electricity powered the flux capacitor, and the time machine returned to 1985. Marty was safe in his own time. Now, because George had learned to stand up for himself, things at home were very different. George and Lorraine loved each other. His brother Dave and his sister Linda didn't argue anymore. And here we go. And Biff never bullied George again. In fact, now Biff worked for George. "I'm almost finished waxing your car, Mr. McFly." George even published a science fiction novel. It was based on a dream he had when he was just a teenager. At least George thought it was a dream. It says, "A Match Made in Space" by George McFly. From that day on, Marty and Doc had many more exciting adventures in the past, present, and future. The end. All right. And the license plate says, "Out of time, out of time." And we are out of time. I really hope you enjoyed that story. It's Uncle Matt. Thanks for joining us on this very special day. Again, it's Pi Day, and it is Season 3 premiere. And why not do this story? That's a great story. Back to the Future. All right. So, thanks again. That's all the time we have for Uncle Matt's bedtime story. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.